Hello, my name is Malina Loeher.
And I'm Jasjeet Dhanota.
We met Kendra as students at UC Davis, and our mutual friendship has grown exponentially in the years since.
We will focus on the way Kendra's love for learning was essential to her college experience and the incredible individual she became. I met Kendra in our sophomore year in an honors class about photography, a passion we shared along with a love for nature. Kendra invited me to join SEEDS, a program within the Ecological Society of America, and our friendship took root from there.
Inviting friends to join in new experiences was a quintessentially Kendra thing to do. As friends have shared stories in the past few weeks, many of us recalled a moment in which Kendra introduced us to something new for us, whether it was a class about fairy tales or a complete career in botany. Kendra studied abroad in Costa Rica during her junior year. She chased frogs, sang Disney songs into thunderstorms, and excelled at taking quick cold showers. After Kendra returned from Costa Rica, she embraced her role as a SEEDS co-president. Kendra's creativity and commitment led to our Davis chapter receiving the 2014 Chapter of the Year Award at the Ecological Society of America's annual meeting.
We attended our second ESA meeting together the following year in Baltimore. Kendra presented her seagrass research. In classic Kendra style, she turned the conference into a vacation. And vacation meant exploring museums nearly every day, hiking and kayaking, devouring beignets covered in powdered sugar, enjoying brunches galore, and of course, visiting the aquarium. In one of our classes, I collaborated with Kendra on an oak gall research project. We studied how fallen oak galls affected the plant and fungal communities beneath the trees in which they fell. The project spanned 2 academic quarters, and it involved 12 students in a variety of research approaches. However, the only part of the entire project that got conclusive results was the part Kendra led. She led a team of students in studying the growth of fungus on agarose plates, and she discovered that the presence of the gall material slowed the growth of the fungus. Her success and leadership on this project demonstrate that Kendra was someone who took the initiative and advocated for high-quality work. Although Kendra loved to learn and grow as a scientist, her priorities were split evenly between academics and fun with friends. In our last phone conversation, Kendra told me about an old college to-do list she found tucked in one of her books. It was a list of schoolwork she was supposed to complete, and we laughed because the only things crossed off the list were brekkies, which meant breakfast, dishes, trash and recycling, and going to arenas. Kendra knew that school was important, but she also valued the precious moments in life, like enjoying a good meal, especially if it involved avocados, and spending quality time with her loved ones.
In the summers of 2014 and 2015, Kendra researched eelgrass and herbivory at UC Davis through Jay Stachowitz's lab as a part of the Zoster Experimental Network. Her work with the so-called Stack Lab would often take her to mudflats of Bodega Marine Laboratory. I first met Kendra there in Bodega Bay, and she was covered in mud. Even though we lived in adjacent student dorms, it took us a few weeks for us to meet because Kendra was always either working odd hours according to the tidal cycle on the mudflats, or she was napping from working so many hours. One of the only times we could tempt her away from the seagrass was to spend the golden sunset hours attempting to skimboard on Salmon Creek Beach. As much as she loved the ocean, Kendra held alpine ecosystems in equally high esteem. Kendra reminded me to appreciate the smell of the pine trees, and she would say that the smell of the Sierra was one of her favorite smells in the world. We miss her. Ooh, and look at that during hikes, during which she would treat a mushroom with the same adoration a person might typically reserve for exotic flowers.
To Kendra, a strange sunfish or a scraggly desert plant were infinitely full of wonder. Let us keep some of that wonder close in our hearts. Let us continue to remember and celebrate this wonderful soul and to take deep breaths of fresh mountain air. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Keenan Chan, and Kendra is my cousin. During the last couple summers when I lived and worked in Ventura, Kendra and I spent a lot of time together. We got to know each other really well. We would eat, mainly ramen, and go adventuring in the Sierras and elsewhere. I think what brought us most together, though, was our love for the ocean and for scuba diving. In Ventura, Kendra and I often got together for dinner after work, many times meeting with her coworkers from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife and mine from the National Park Service. Inevitably, our conversations would lead us to our latest diving experiences. She would tell me about the dive sites she went to, and I would try to figure out where she dove based on her descriptions, because she never remembered the names. Kendra knew the names of an impressive amount of subtitle species, but when she was stumped, which was rare, she would describe them to me and would try to figure out exactly what they were together. Since many of you probably haven't scuba dived, I thought I'd try and paint a picture of what diving was like so you could better understand why we spent so much of our lives underwater. Diving is hardly a glamorous sport. First of all, you squeeze into a typically cold, damp, and tight wetsuit. Then you have to throw your weight belt on, which smashes into your hip bones, bruising them. Then you grab your air tank and throw it on your back, which pulls at your back, forcing you into a hunched position. As you make your way to the water, you wonder if it's all worth the trouble. Then you jump into the ocean and the weight disappears. And you're immediately reminded that it is worth it. This was certainly the way both Kendra and I felt. Once underwater, you would see the giant kelp reaching the surface, forming a treetop canopy. Light rays overhead beaming down through the kelp fronds, illuminating the colorful life below. Orange fish, Garibaldi, darting in front of you, protecting their eggs. Pink and purple sea stars clinging to the rocks, searching for their next meal. Spiny lobsters tucked in the shadows of a rocky overhang. Antennas sticking out, feeling for predators. Turfs of red algae swaying gently in the swell. Curious seals poking their heads over rocks to investigate what you were doing down there. And of course, Kendra's favorite, nudibranchs. The beautiful sea slugs that would slime their way over the substrate. She was the nudibranch expert. These are just some of the beautiful things that Kendra was able to see during her dives. As many of you know, Kendra was a very patient and observant person, and that held true to her style of diving. I remember the last time we dove together, I wanted to show her one of my favorite dive spots. The water was pretty cold, and the conditions weren't great, so we didn't actually see much of what I just described. But despite all this, Kendra was so stoked after the dive. We walked out of the water, big smile on her face, teeth chattering because she was freezing. Still stoked after the dive. As we were walking up, she was already talking about the cool stuff she had just seen. That level of excitement was contagious, and any disappointment that I had was quickly pushed aside. The diving community in California is quite large, but we're a close family. I've been amazed by the amount of support the dive community has shown me, to my family, and all those affected by the Conception tragedy. From vigils in Monterey to Ventura and everywhere in between. To the cards and social media posts and the crowdfunding campaigns. I was told by the staff in Channel Islands National Park that they lowered their flags half-mast in honor of Kendra and Scott, and then all the families that were affected by the tragedy. Every diver felt the pain and loss from this tragedy because we're all family, connected by our love for the ocean and respect for each other. Kendra was only 26, but she managed to leave a lasting impression on the marine community. She was well known by many, including staff of the Department of the Interior, where she contributed a great deal to the protection of endangered species in California. I've always enjoyed my times with Kendra. She was such an easy person to talk to and such a happy person. She will be missed. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's a real honor to be here. My name is Jay Stachowitz. I'm sure many of you don't know me. I was one of Kendra's professors at UC Davis, the nominal leader of the Stack Lab, as Malina pointed out. I had the privilege of knowing Kendra as a student. I was her mentor, and I would definitely say as a colleague. The term well-rounded seems so cliche when you describe students, but for Kendra, it really just fit her to a T. She was a brilliant student, she was creative, she was a driven researcher, she was a friend to lean on, and a tireless advocate for conservation and participation in ecology by members of all sorts of groups. She was truly a model student, the best that any of us could wish for. I think we all, many of us faculty at UC Davis, we essentially fought over having her in our lab. We all wanted her. And I really feel so fortunate to have had the chance to know her and that work with her over the past few years. And thinking about what I wanted to say today, I actually went back and reread some of the things that Kendra submitted to me for some of the classes that she took with me. And the first thing that noticed, it won't surprise any of you, was that her passion for conservation just jumped off the page at me. Her joy, her enthusiasm for marine ecology, her passion, it reminded me of the impact that she had not just on me as a teacher, but on every single student in those classes that she was in. I can still remember, if I close my eyes, seeing her eyes light up in class as she argued, and I will say argued, with her classmates in a very polite, yet very confident, and a don't mess with me sort of way. Because she knew her stuff, and she wasn't afraid to say that she knew her stuff. And I knew when I saw that was the student that I wanted in my lab. The goal of the class that I had her in was to train students to work and for me to send abroad to work with my partners in a larger project. But I couldn't let her go. Selfishly, I knew I needed to have her work with me, and I wasn't going to send her to work with anybody else. I had to be selfish and keep her with me. I wasn't disappointed, as many of you can appreciate. She had a keen eye as a naturalist. She was always asking questions, and her drive, her motivation to find stuff out was just insatiable. Even in the face of all the competing demands of a college student that you've heard all the other things she did besides, work with me. I can still remember, as you might imagine, she spent a lot of late nights in the lab. I can still remember an email that I got from her that was timestamped 3 a.m. And the only way to describe the tone of this email is just giddy. Not delirious, not overtired, but giddy. She was giddy with excitement with what she had just done, the experiment she had just conducted, and she couldn't wait to tell me about the results and what she had found. And that just so captures for me everything about Kendra, the hallmark of a budding young scientist and the potential that she was already realizing. That research was sufficiently exciting that other people thought it was great, and she ended up publishing that research in a major journal. Now, the problem with that research, not from my perspective, but the problem from Kendra's perspective, was that it wasn't big enough. It wasn't interesting enough. It didn't answer what she would have called a big and important question. It was intellectually exciting, but it didn't make a difference in the conservation of the natural world. And that's what she wanted to do. I think in her actions and her words, if I read back to those things she wrote for me, I'll just briefly quote from one of them. Her dream, it really was to save the world with science. Combining science and education with conservation and sustainability to better understand and use natural ecosystems. That's what she wanted. That was her passion. And I think as we're gathered here today to remember Scott and Kendra in this most appropriate location with the sort of beauty of the natural world all around us, I'm comforted that her dream, Kendra's dream, will live on. And what you see all around you here, all of us here today, are a tribute to her impact on the world. For me personally, her influence will endure through how I mentor students, how I encourage them to pursue their dreams, and how all these, in a small way, will remind them of the legacy of a brilliant young woman who wanted to save the world with science. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Lena Chang. I'm a senior biologist in the Ventura Field Office of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Rachel and I speak today on behalf of Kendra's friends and colleagues in our office and across our agency, many of whom contributed to our message today and many of whom are here today. We had the privilege of knowing Kendra in her professional life and are grateful for this opportunity to share her accomplishments and the lasting impression she made on everyone she worked with. Kendra began her career with the Fish and Wildlife Service in Portland, Oregon in 2016 as part of the Directorate Fellowship Program. Over 11 intensive weeks, Kendra researched freshwater mussel populations and established a monitoring protocol to engage young citizen scientists in data collection and educate them about mussel and aquatic ecology. After the completion of her program, Kendra was hired as a fish and wildlife biologist, joining our team in Ventura in 2017. In this capacity, Kendra took on the complex issues of conservation of threatened and endangered species in coastal Southern California. Not easy work, yet she quickly navigated the steep learning curve with her amazing attitude and exceptional work ethic. Kendra prioritized dedicating time in the field to learn the species and habitats that she was charged with protecting. And she worked with state, federal, and private partners to further our conservation mission. Aside from the regulatory work, Kendra loved getting out into the field and doing outreach, and sharing her excitement of the natural world with young students. One of our favorite memories of Kendra was when she was able to tame a group of rowdy boys because they were so intrigued by the creepy invertebrates she had in her hands. And then they absorbed all of her facts about dragonfly larvae. Outreach to new audiences was important to Kendra, and she worked to increase awareness, diversity, and inclusion in our workforce. In our office, we worked together to highlight Asian American and Pacific Island heritage. Kendra was proud to learn and tell her own family story, and was very proud of her brother Kevin's senior thesis film, Perpetual Foreigner, which she shared with all of us. In 2018, Kendra was selected to join a region-wide diversity recruitment team. As the youngest and newest employee on that team, Kendra provided key insight into how we could reach strong and diverse candidates. Among this group of seasoned career employees, she led, grounding them with her unique perspective, and was instrumental in making recommendations that resulted in the recruitment of diverse employees in ways we had not done before. Kendra's influence on us as an agency and as people will be lasting. She set the example of applying excellence and immeasurable positivity to everything she did. In doing this, she made everyone around her better. We spend so much of our lives at work. Know that Kendra spent this time doing work she loved, that was meaningful, where she was respected as a professional and adored as a friend. Kendra's Directorate Fellowship supervisor said that he knew back then that the future of conservation was in good hands because Kendra Chan was in the world. We will continue to strive to meet that high bar she set and do our very best every day to make Kendra proud. On behalf of Kendra's Fish and Wildlife Service family, thank you for allowing us to share this part of Kendra's legacy with you today. I'd like to now introduce you to Rachel Henry, who will share more about Kendra's conservation legacy with you. Thank you.
I worked intimately with Kendra during her time with the Fish and Wildlife Service. Working alongside her was not only an honor, but a true inspiration every single day. She made everyone around her a better version of themselves. Not only did she make me a better version of myself, she made me a better biologist, a better colleague, an overall better employee of the Fish and Wildlife Service. The mission of the Fish and Wildlife Service is working with others to conserve, protect, and enhance fish, wildlife, and plants and their habitats for the continuing benefit of the American people. Kendra not only embodied our mission, she truly was our mission. Kendra's warm, charismatic, and overall inviting character resulted in partnerships with landowners that 10, even 5 years ago, the Ventura Fish and Wildlife Office would have never dreamed we'd be working on species conservation with. She helped to make conservationists out of some of the least likely people to play a role in conservation of species. I attribute that to her overall character. During Kendra's time with the Fish and Wildlife Service, she played a major role in the conservation and recovery of numerous threatened, endangered, and special status species, including the California tiger salamander, the California red-legged frog, western spadefoot toad, her beloved tidewater goby, the southern sea otter, Ridgway's rail, Lompoc urbicanta, island barberry. The list goes on. The conservation and recovery work she was a part of during her time with the service will go on to benefit these species for decades to come. Some of these projects resulted in conservation of hundreds of acres of natural land that will be protected in perpetuity. Those lands will be protected long after all of us, after our children, after our children's children will walk this earth. Kendra was a part of creating that legacy. The energy and life force she brought to this world was so positive, so full of life, so exhilarating. She was going to do so many good things with that energy. Losing Kendra is so hard, but I find comfort knowing that her energy truly does live on through the impact she left on this world, through her successful career, through the rest of us in many different ways. And perhaps this is her greatest legacy of all of us out there in the world trying to live our best life like Kendra. Thank you.
Hi and good afternoon. My name is Tammy. I am cousin to Kevin and Kendra and niece to Vicky and Scott on the Moore side of the family. I would like to briefly update you on our online campaign through the GoFundMe page. The campaign is called the Chan Moore Legacy Fund, and all the proceeds are going to be donated directly to the Monterey Bay Aquarium, the California Academy of Science, and Ocean Conservancy in Scott and Kendra's memory. On behalf of Kendra and Scott's family and friends, we would like to sincerely thank you for your generous donations and all of your heartfelt words. Since the September 4th start date of the campaign has raised more than $42,000. We know Scott and Kendra are looking down on all of us today in total awe of the outreach and the outpouring love that has been more abundant than any of us could ever have imagined. I've had the privilege of having Scott as my uncle for 35 years, and I've been blessed with the opportunity to be able to watch Kendra grow into an extraordinary young woman. During my visits to California and summer visits the family would make to Illinois, I remember reading stories to Kendra throughout her childhood. When my daughter came into my life almost 2 years ago, Aunt Vicky sent me a box of books that had once belonged to Kendra when she was a little girl. One of the books I have with me today is entitled What is Heaven by Maria Shriver. The book goes through the story of a little girl named Kate who was wondering, what is heaven? As she seeks answers, her mother offers explanations along the way. I wanted to read you a small excerpt from this book. Kate asked, if heaven's in the sky, how come I can't see it? Kate's mom sat down next to her and thought for a moment. Heaven isn't a place that you can see, she explained. It's somewhere that you can believe in. I imagine it's a beautiful place where you can sit on soft clouds and talk to other people who are there. At night, you can sit next to the stars, which are the brightest of anywhere in the entire universe. Everyone there is happy to be in such a peaceful place where God will love them forever. So Kate looked up at the sky and thought of her family members who were in heaven. She said, I want you to know that even though you are no longer here, your spirit will always be alive within me. I would like to use this passage that I just read as a reminder that although Scott and Kendra are not physically present here today, their spirits will continue to be alive within our hearts forever. Thank you.
I see you in the stars, a grain of sand, in the smile of a child, and in the wonder of an oldie. You have not died. You're the purest particle in physics, as my brother would say. My brother didn't like people fussing over him. He told me many times he didn't like us doing anything for his birthday. I look at all of you and I think, Scott, you would not like this. Hundreds of people coming out to fete you? Well, little brother, we are making up for all those years when you wouldn't let us throw you a birthday party. And Kendra, you had just had your 26th birthday before heading out on another wonder-filled father-daughter diving trip. In contrast to your dad, you loved being around people, celebrating life, and would do it 24/7 if you didn't have to sleep. So I say, dear niece, here's our belated birthday party for you to celebrate your wondrous life on this little blue-green planet. Unlike some of us in this family, Scott did not consider himself an activist. He didn't write many letters to elected officials or heads of companies doing bad things. He didn't organize people to protest at City Hall. He didn't march on Washington. And for sure, he did not wear a pink pussy hat and go with us on the Women's March. He did, however, walk in the March for Science because he believed in sharing real science. His style of activism was to gather families and organize safe biking for school kids and get a slow-down bump in the neighborhood so pedestrians could be safe too. He went back to college, as you've heard, to get a teaching credential so he could teach AP Physics and activate kids' curiosity about the natural world. His volunteering in East Timor this summer for 6 weeks as a diver was really amazing. He wanted to help catalog and survey the coral reefs down there and convince the government to create a marine reserve. I was really excited when Kendra decided to pursue marine ecology, a field I tried to enter years ago when women were considered unfit to be marine biologists. Kendra had an unquenched curiosity about nature, and especially things marine. She loved peering under rocks in the intertidal zone to see what critter lurked there. And we shared a fascination for colorful nudibranchs, what some call sea slugs. Knowing she wanted to go on to graduate school and do more research, I had planned to pass on to her my California Academy of Sciences studies of Opisthabranchiata mollusks of the Pacific coast of North America. When I came back from Alaska at the end of August, my plan was to invite her to do a trip along the coast together so she could bring me up to date on her latest research while I did some field sketching. And now when I sketch solo, I imagine her whispering excitedly into my ear, "Look at this, Auntie Bobby. See how its tentacles move? Let's go check out this other rock." So as you heard, Kendra was an activist and a teacher. Like a magnet, she drew other souls into her explorations in Alaska, Costa Rica, the Sierras, and other fascinating places. Her enthusiasm extended to children, for she loved teaching them about the marine world. In my recent nature journaling adventures, I have met people who worked with Kendra, or were in the same SEEDS club, or whom she trained to work with children. One of them said to me, "Here I was, 52 years old, mother of 3, being trained and taught by this young, vivacious gal who knew so much about marine life. She was a great mentor to me." Kendra's excitement about life was infectious to all of us who knew her and all of you who have met her. And not only that, as you've heard, she made the best garlic bread in our family, and she led the annual Christmas cookie bake fests. My much-loved brother and niece did not hold back. They found their passions, shared them with others, and lived. But before I step away, I'd like to ask you to join me in reading aloud Mary Oliver's poem, The Summer Day, on the back of your program. And for those of you who wish to stand and recite together, feel free to do so, or sit as you feel comfortable. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? The grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who's gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? So I invite you to be inspired by Kendra and Scott's lives. Be your own kind of mover, shaker, activist for your passions. Make a difference. Go out and share your wild and precious life. It would so please Kendra and Scott.
Thank you all for your patience and your listening to our stories. Raise your hand if you have a story, because if you do, we have story time in small groups waiting. We're going to have food. Who likes food? Everybody? Good. All right. We have a delectable array of food from different parts of the world we'd like you to taste. We'd also like you to use this time to get to know one another, to share your stories with each other about how we knew Scott, how we knew Kendra, and what their lives were like to us, how we can benefit from them and go forward. Thank you all so very, very much.